Good morning. It is Wednesday, April 15th, 2026. This is your deep dive daily briefing. I am your anchor, delivering a comprehensive analysis of the pivotal events that have defined the last 12 hours. We begin our broadcast on the world stage, where the strategic landscape of the Middle East has entered an even more perilous phase following the total collapse of the Islamabad peace talks. The high-stakes negotiations between the United States and Iran concluded without an agreement, as both sides failed to bridge fundamental divides over nuclear enrichment and the sovereignty of maritime corridors. In the immediate aftermath, United States President Donald Trump issued a final warning that the American naval blockade around Iranian ports would be strictly enforced starting at 14 o'clock GMT. The president explicitly stated that any Iranian attack boats approaching the blockade would be destroyed, signaling a shift from diplomatic maneuvering to direct military enforcement. This follows reports of the heaviest Israeli strikes in Lebanon to date, which have caused a humanitarian crisis with at least 254 fatalities and displaced over 1.3 million people across the Levant. While Pakistan continues to seek a path back to the negotiating table, the region remains on a hair trigger, with the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps reportedly laying sea mines and enforcing its own counter-blockade in the Strait of Hormuz.
Transitioning from the front lines of conflict to the broader global economy, the International Monetary Fund has released its April 2026 World Economic Outlook, offering a somber assessment of global resilience. The IMF has officially cut its global growth forecast to 3.1%, down from previous estimates, as the war-driven energy shock begins to take a structural toll on industrial productivity. Under the current adverse scenario, the fund warns that many nations could enter outright recessions if oil prices sustain an average of $110 per barrel through the year. While the United States has shown surprising resilience with a 2.3% growth outlook, supported by technology spending and tax cuts, the Eurozone and East Asia are facing a much steeper hit due to their heavy dependence on Middle Eastern energy imports. This economic unevenness is being exacerbated by a risk-off sentiment in financial markets and a historically high level of global uncertainty, which the IMF notes is drifting toward a more severe stagflationary environment than initially anticipated.
In the realm of finance, Wall Street has seen a volatile yet defiant reaction to the mounting geopolitical tail risks. On Tuesday, major indexes rose toward the edge of all-time highs as oil prices briefly eased on hopes of renewed talks, only to face fresh anxiety as the blockade became official. The 10-year United States Treasury yield settled near 4.29% as investors digest a mixed wholesale inflation report, which saw the producer price index rise to 4% in March, primarily driven by soaring energy costs. This environment has placed immense stress on the private credit sector, as institutional investors scramble to pull capital from funds tied to software and manufacturing sectors that may be vulnerable to the current crisis. Despite this, strong quarterly earnings from financial giants like BlackRock and Citigroup have provided a temporary floor for the markets. However, J.P. Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon has cautioned that the increasingly complex set of global risks makes it impossible to predict the near-term trajectory of the financial markets, urging extreme caution among institutional lenders.
Turning our attention to the technology sector, the focus has shifted toward a massive balance sheet-driven effort to secure the physical energy required for the AI revolution. In the past 24 hours, hyperscalers including Alphabet, Amazon, and Meta have announced historic capital commitments to next-generation nuclear infrastructure. These tech giants are now acting as active financiers of small modular reactor projects, such as Meta's funding of TerraPower units and Amazon's 5-gigawatt partnership with X-Energy. This strategic pivot is a direct response to a looming energy crisis. Global AI data center demand is now projected to hit 96 gigawatts by year-end, a figure that traditional utility grids are proving unable to accommodate. By funding these nuclear projects, the technology sector is attempting to de-risk its future operational stability, moving away from reliance on a global energy market that has been decimated by the closure of the Strait of Hormuz and the high cost of imported fuels.
Finally, we look at the logistics and supply chain networks that serve as the vital arteries of global commerce, which are now facing the most severe disruption in modern history. The dual blockade of both the Strait of Hormuz and the Red Sea has effectively closed the two primary maritime corridors of the Middle East simultaneously. With tanker traffic near zero and insurance coverage for the Persian Gulf largely cancelled, every major ocean carrier has been forced to adopt the Cape of Good Hope as their permanent routing for Asia to Europe transit. This detour adds up to 14 days to voyage times
and has triggered a structural shortage of vessel capacity as containers remain stranded in blocked Gulf ports like Jebel Ali. Logistics analysts warn that this is the largest disruption to world energy and cargo supply since the 1970s. In response, 72% of trade professionals have now prioritized AI-driven adaptive networks and regional just-in-case inventory strategies, accepting that the era of lean, low-cost global logistics has been replaced by a period of permanent cost premiums and strategic regionalization. That concludes our global briefing for today. Thank you for joining us.